Get the recording started here before I start talking to everybody.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone here today for the Cloud Virtual Chapter uh, meeting this week. I've got Mike Martin here today, and he is going to be talking through DevOps on Microsoft Azure. Before we get that kicked off, I want to just go through some past community news and keep you guys informed on things that are going on within our community as a whole. So if you are planning to go to the PASS Summit this year, now is a great time to get registered. You can use a discount code that we have there on the screen, VC15CHB6, and get a discount on your registration. The registration right now is $17.95 through July 12th. It is pretty much the SQL Server event of the year. So if you're looking to find an event that you can go to learn quite a bit about SQL Server and also network with the largest SQL Server community, this is pretty much it, the PASS Summit. And that will be this year in Seattle. As part of helping grow the community, the PASS Summit is doing the PASS organization is doing something a little bit different with the 24 hours of PASS that's coming up here in just a few weeks, actually in just a couple weeks. They're doing it as free online training for folks that have not spoken at the PASS Summit before. So it's a lineup of new and upcoming speakers, and it's something that I encourage everyone to check out. There's going to be sessions on IoT, Power BI, and predictive analytics. So it's one of those things that, if you want something where you can just cram in a bunch of SQL Server information and find out a lot about data, the 24 hours of PASS is a good route to go. Additionally, outside of the Cloud Virtual Chapter that we're all attending here today, there are a number of other virtual chapters that are out there. If you are looking for anything regarding security, virtualization, in-memory, data science, there is a virtual chapter for you. And knowing that not everyone is an English speaker, there are other chapters that do other languages as the native language for those chapters as well. So you can go and see sessions that are done in Russian, Spanish, Chinese, Portuguese, and a number of others. So check it out. Share this information with your peers and the community of people that you know. There is probably a session out there that somebody needs that or yourself that's happening in the next month or so. Just to give you kind of a flavor for what's coming up in the pipeline from the other chapters, so that some of the things that are out there. There is an end-to-end risk assessment that's coming through on PowerView through the Excel BI from the data architecture. They're looking at architectural components that are critical to SQL Server success. And with the high availability and disaster recovery coming up on June 9th, which was yesterday, wasn't it? Looking at my calendar. Well, if you had been online yesterday, you could have seen when database corruption strikes with the high availability and disaster recovery. These are just a sampling of what's out there and what's happened either over the last couple of days or happening later this month. So please check that out. Not only does PASS have its annual event and the virtual chapters, but there are also community-driven events that are associated with the PASS organization. These are the SQL Saturdays. If you're not familiar with SQL Saturdays, they are a way that you can go out and see, depending on the SQL Saturday, anywhere between 4 and 6 sessions in a single Saturday. Sometimes they do it on Fridays or Sundays, but a single day you can sit down for no cost to the event. There may be a lunch fee, but generally these are free events where you can just come in and learn things about SQL Server. And there's pretty much one or two happening in the US and internationally every single weekend. Just looking at what's coming up this upcoming weekend, we got Rhineland, Edinburgh, Houston, Nova Scotia, and South Florida. So, wherever you're at, there is probably a SQL Saturday that is going to happen nearby in the next year, or within a decent road trip within the next few weeks. To speak a little bit about our chapter, one of the things that we are looking for is more sessions on cloud and cloud topics. So whether it's Azure, Amazon, Google, VMware, we're looking for people that are willing to speak to the PaaS community and have topics that are related to data. So whether it is SQL Server on Azure, SQL Server on Amazon, building out VMs that host SQL Server on VMware or Google, we'd love to hear your story, hear about what you're doing, what's making what you're doing a success, the lessons learned, new features. Pretty much, how are you leveraging cloud in your environment, and let's share it with the rest of the community. If you've got a topic that you'd like to speak on, please reach out, cloudvc@sqlpass.org. We'll get you lined up here. We do actually have the next 5 sessions open. I am working with a couple people for some of those dates, but if you're interested, please reach out. We'd love to have you as part of this, and it's a great way if you're looking for building out your speaking profile to get in ahead of that and start building out your ability to work within the community. Also, with PaaS Summit coming up, there is a lot of volunteering opportunities, so you can volunteer with PaaS as well. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Mike here, let him get started on his session, and give us a chance to talk about DevOps in Microsoft Azure. One moment here. Presenter, and there we go. And Mike, it is all you.
Okay. Can everybody hear me before all that? I know you can, but do the attendees, can the attendees hear me? Let's just hope you can. Hi, everybody.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you, Mike.
Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I first should say thanks for having me. It's the first time I'm doing a virtual chapter on SQL Pass. Thanks for having me. I'm very pleased with the opportunity. I want to say hi from sunny Belgium. It's 6 p.m. So for others it will be morning or evening or even night for those who are already way ahead of us. It could be, there's always people crazy enough to stay up at night. We are all IT pros, we just love to do that stuff. I even have a special guest in my room here, but he is just listening to the talk. He's not going to intervene, but I have Scott Klein with me, TE from Microsoft Corp, an ex-SQL MVP, and an Azure guru too. And he's doing a talk with me tomorrow on. He's actually doing a keynote on a conference for me, so I invited him to join my session. It's always fun to have somebody in my room. Now, a little bit about me. Who am I? I'm a Belgian guy. Apparently, people are scared of the Belgians, so I heard last summit. What I do basically is I'm an Azure architect, both on infrastructures and applications. So I do a little bit of everything. They call me the perfect hybrid one. So as we always talk about hybrid cloud, there's also hybrid people. And that is a little bit what I want to talk to you about today, since DevOps is more a hybrid way of living, and we need people that understand both worlds, the best of both worlds. And we need, of course, a lot of tooling for that and a lot of organization for that, and especially goodwill of people working together. If you want to contact me, all the contact data are on the first slide, as you can see now, I hope. I did share my screen, yes. I'm also an Azure MVP, so I'm also one of those crazy guys that get to join you guys during the week of SQL Pass Summit. All right, let's get talking. So when we talk about releasing and building software and deploying all that stuff, we used to do everything manually. And at a certain point in time, we invented something called scripting. Who remembers the early days of VB script? God forbid that we use that again. And we have these opportunities to automate some things, but things weren't optimal. We still needed to create all the machines. We still needed to deploy everything by by going to the machine itself or push it and make it schedule something not really optimal. And then we evolved a little bit once Jeffrey Snover discovered and unveiled this Monad manifesto. He had this big plan of automating all things Windows, and hence PowerShell was born. And PowerShell, as it is stated, is a very powerful, I wouldn't dare to say scripting language, because that is unrespectful to the language itself. PowerShell is a .NET environment, but really focused on IT pros. So it's the best of both worlds again for people who do nothing but configuring and optimization of Windows environments, but also for developers. PowerShell is becoming more and more important. We have a full integration of PowerShell in Visual Studio now these days. 2015 will even enforce PowerShell's files from within the IDE itself. So you can have full PowerShell support now from within Visual Studio. Even developers need to use it when they want to update it or install NuGet packages. So it's becoming more and more important for those guys too. And hence why PowerShell is one of the first native and integrated DevOps toolings that we can have, and where developers and IT pros can find a common line of working. So to give you an idea, the Azure PowerShell commandlets, for those who don't know them, let me just give you a small demo of what's possible with all these things. So we have, like for instance, let me just create a new blank PowerShell script. So what you're seeing now here is the ISE. For those who don't know it, it's the D tool by choice when you want to do PowerShell. Why? Because first of all, it's free, and second of all, it has some nice features like debugging and stuff, so you can really go on and speed up things very easily. It just comes with Windows installed. If you don't find it, it's a feature that you need to add, and you will find it easily. So what we can have with Azure, because there's a set of commandlets for Azure, for managing all your assets in Azure. Now, for starters, we first of all need to create our account, or need to use an Azure account. Now, some people might say, oh, why don't you do it through the means of the publish setting files? That is being considered now a bad practice. I prefer to use the Add Azure account. Why? Because that passes through the Azure Active Directory, and that will make sure that you do an RBACing in the future. So RBAC will be, so role-based account and security will be enforced towards every single asset in the future on the Azure platform. For now, only a couple of things fully support RBAC, but in the future that will all be managed through Azure Active Directory, and it gives you a more granular security feeling. Plus the fact that if you log in with even with the live ID, that will also be converted to an Azure Active Directory account. So there's no real need anymore for using a publish setting file. Although I can show you some examples where there still will be a need, but that will change in the future too. So for starters, I'm going to now just connect to my Azure environment, log in with my credentials. I'll give my password. It will probably ask me now for a code. As I am trying to be very secure, I enabled an MFA on my account. Which means just get a code. That's the annoyance when doing demos, of course. And if all goes well, within a couple of seconds, my account will be added and I can start managing my assets, if all goes well. Correct. And there we are. As you can see, these are all my tenants and all my subscriptions. And now I can just easily go and get all, for instance, all my Azure VMs, take a look at it, run that. As you can see, all my VMs that I have for the moment, everything is stopped in that subscription, but as you can see, there's a lot of things that you can do, and from there out I can start deploying new stuff, like create a new Azure VM, so add Azure VM. Sorry, new Azure VM, my apologies. And so I can create a full script with everything in there that I need to create, and I will eventually have to configure everything myself. Now, this isn't optimal, but with all respect, I can still already start automating a lot of stuff. I can deploy that PowerShell script by means of Visual Studio and Team Foundation Server, or by means of using Git and auto deployment tools like Octodeploy and stuff like that. And I can use that to create my environment. But then again, that's not optimal. I still need to go in there and need to configure everything. I could, of course, then just enable remoting on those machines and then remote in there and start doing and invoking all the things like install Windows feature and stuff like that, but it isn't really optimal. So considering that, we can say that there's better ways of doing that. But you get a good command, you get a good toolbox with the Azure commandlets, and it gives you already a jump board to the first step. Now, let me just get the impression that this thing is control down. That's much better. Okay. So when PowerShell evolved, they added a little thing called desired state configuration. Now, the beauty of this is that it's a very simple way of defining your machines, and that is more in a matter of declaration than it is in scripting, that you need to define your machines. So you do have a script that you need to use to deploy the configuration, but the PowerShell desired state configuration will enable all the things that you've defined in that configuration data script. Again, one of the goals of DevOps is that you can also reuse resources, and that you just create it once and that you can apply it many times, and that you can automate your releases, and that your developers can easily change something. Like if they want to add a parameter, they can do so. If the configuration change, they can easily do that, and they can integrate that in their full workflow. Yeah. So there's this velocity thing. And next to that, we also have the flexibility, because we have push-pull deployment. So you can either push a configuration stating that this machine needs to be configured like that, or even after creation, you just create it. Or the server can even pull the deployment, and it will auto configure it itself if it finds a new configuration file, for instance. Yeah. Giving you also the flexibility that it does what it states, meaning it keeps your machine in the desired state. So even if there's configuration drift, the machine will be reapplied to the original configuration that you had, and that's why you want to use something like desired state configuration. You guys still with me? Right, I think so. Just check if there's any typing. Okay. So if we want to use DSC, there's a lot of resources that we can use, and these resources make life easy for us. There's something called the DSC Resource Kit. What it does, it helps creating resources for different sources. You have kits for Azure Active Directory on-prem. You have kits for things like web servers, and they're all always in an experimental mode that you can deploy them, and from there out you can easily just say, I need a machine with that kind of configuration, that kind of a resource, deploy it for me. And that can be a server with, let's say, anything. You can even make a resource kit for SQL Server, for instance. If you have all the resources applied somewhere, you have a configuration file somewhere, and you just apply a policy afterwards, for example. Those are the things that are possible with the resource kit too. Then there's an addition in the PowerShell world, starting from the next version, so the one that will be deployed with Windows 10 and Windows Server vNext, so 2016, that will probably be the name. I'm still not sure about that. There's two things that you can have there. You have PowerShell Get and OneGet, and these are the things that you can use to download modules and publish resources from there out, so you don't need to install these resource kits yourself anymore. You just can use PowerShell Kit, or better naming the PowerShell Package Manager, because they changed the name recently, to install the resources to your machine and make sure that the configuration is being applied to these resources. To give you an idea what these resources look like, how you apply them, I will show you that in a couple of seconds. So, as I just said, if you're interested in applying these new technologies, take a look at Windows Management Framework 5.0. They're quickly releasing now in new versions, and there you can even play with these new resources, but also with PowerShell Package Manager to make sure that you can deploy your applications. For those who don't know NuGet packages or OneGet, so the NuGet packages is for dependency handling and for making sure that when you develop, you have all the latest versions of the resources if you want them, and that everybody can have the same resources triggered from the same source. In the past, we had that dependency hell thing, which we call DLL hell. It still can happen if you do NuGetting wrong, but it avoids these conflicts. Now, on top of that, they created a small layer called Chocolately. There was a community thing, and with Chocolately, you can easily deploy applications through the means of NuGet packages. So you pack an application, you put it in a NuGet package, and that gets deployed by OneGet. So that way you can have galleries, just like you have NuGet galleries where the applications are being stored, and that way you can easily install things like, let's say, Office 365 client tools and Notepad++ and things like that. So if you want to try these out, take a look at that, because it will become a very important resource when you're doing DSC. So the resource kits, they come with a monthly release, and as I said, there's experimental resources. You can easily find them on the Technet gallery. If you go to gallery.technet.com, or technet.microsoft.com, you go to the gallery, and there you just type in DSC Resource Kit. You will get the latest generation. I think they're already up to 12, but it could be that they're already one version up there. Now, so what is the goal of DSC? Well, it's based on standards, first of all. So every standard deployment has a standard way of acting. So the definition is always a standard from a Windows perspective. Yeah. It's a full platform. It's not only a language, but it's also the engine and resources, as I already explained. So you use these resources to easily deploy certain kind of machines. And of course, it's Windows based. Now, this will probably change, since we've heard a lot of good news coming from the open source world, where they started opening the CLR for .NET on Unix, and probably we will have somewhere in the future a PowerShell DSC for Linux. There's already a couple of things that you can do for Linux machines, but it's not a lot. So Windows Best is for now still the best OS for doing that stuff. If you want to do DevOps with a more open operating system in the back, then it's probably better to look at things like Puppet and Chef. And that way you can streamline your DevOps and your continuous deployment also. Now, if we take a deeper look to DSC, we have, first of all, two things that we need. We have an authoring phase, including PowerShell. And then we, first of all, have a PowerShell script which we can use to push the configuration, and then we have the extension, the declaration of the machine itself. I will show you an example in a second. It's schema driven, so there's and there's even IntelliSense foreseen for that. So, and there's also an early binding schema validation to avoid mistakes in your scripts. There's also some third-party languages and tools that can apply to DSC. There's even support from within Visual Studio to read the DSC files. So from that perspective, you can easily just start using those tools. Yeah. And then in the staging phase, you have this full declarative configuration based upon standard MOF instances, Microsoft Operating Frameworks instances, and then the calculation is calculated on all nodes. And then you can stage your DSC data and configure it. And last, you will deploy it, and then you have a local configuration store that will parse and dispatch it, and then it will start implementing all the resources that you defined that you want to use, and you can then repeat this phase many times as you need machines, right? And the only thing that needs to change is like NetBIOS names and Windows machine names and stuff like that. So the cool thing about this thing is that we can call it idempotent. That's the buzzword of the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Just making it so that it can be executed many times. Now, how does it work in the background? So you have PowerShell, and then you have the engine, and then it will then it can be extended. And this is where PowerShell DSC has one additional thing, is that it has some good logging features, it has some reporting features, and it can, as I explained already, it can also pull the resources and the configuration settings instead of pushing them. Yeah. And you can easily create your own extension points through these. Most of the newer configuration management tools also support PowerShell DSC, so it's really worth looking at it. So, as I already said, Azure came, and that's why I'm moving up to that topic now. So, in Azure we have this concept of infrastructure as a service, and where you guys as SQL guys, you want to use Azure mostly in two ways. You either want to use it in a PaaS model, where you can have Azure SQL databases and Azure SQL servers run by Microsoft with all the cool features and all the cool new toys. For those who are interested, I think there will be some chapters on those too, probably. I think the guys from the virtual chapter can either confirm or deny that. I don't know. Maybe they're looking at that. But there's also the concept of infrastructure as a service, where you run your own SQL server, and where actually the workload of SQL Server is highly appreciated, because Microsoft itself states that it is a very good platform to run your SQL servers on, especially with all the new SKUs we have on the size units that we have, like the G sizes and the D sizes, where we can enjoy ultra fast disks and let's say SSD storage for true high-speed throughput. Okay, you see that Jody also added the gallery script into DSC Resource Kit. Thank you for that, Jody. So, and with that, the Azure PowerShell commands, which I already introduced, and now we can start combining DSC together with PowerShell. So we can combine our PowerShell command, a normal PowerShell commandlets with the Azure commandlets, and we want to create. We now have the opportunity to create VMs through PowerShell, and then attribute the DSC to it. Okay. So when we talk about enterprise grade, Azure is one platform which is focusing on manageability. As I mentioned already, there's tools like Chef, Puppet, and PowerShell DSC. There's others like what's it called again? Vagrant and I forgot the name for a moment, but there's some other open tools there too, which you can use to configure and manage your VMs. Of course, we need some IDs for that. This is just some basic information that you need to know when you're doing Azure and the tools that you can use to manage your environment. Now, managing your VMs through Visual Studio, that's all nice and well if you have only a couple of them or if you're doing demos. But if you want to do it in a high enterprise with a lot of machines, I strongly advise you to take a look at both the automation tools, as which we can also take a look at System Center and things like Operations Management Suite, the System Center advisor from the past. Now, I think there's something wrong with my slide deck. When we introduced, I remember now. When we introduced the infrastructure as a service, we also introduced something called DVM Extensions, and for that we can use an extension called the custom script extension, and this allows us to push PowerShell scripts and let them execute like that. So that gives us a platform to create custom PowerShell scripts and use configuration files and DSC files from within that extension. Let me show you how that works. Well, when you have a VM where you go through the portal, you can easily just go to a VM. Let's take this one, for instance. And we want to take a look at all settings. Now, this is a VM that is stopped, but it doesn't make a difference. And from here out, you can add the extensions. So if you guys can see that, okay. Zoom in here, so extensions, you select that and you can do add now. And there you have this, why am I seeing, oh yeah, I know why. Alright, I know why. I took a wrong machine. I was actually looking for another machine, this one. So we go to extensions, and if we add an extension, we can actually see that we have here this custom script extension. And for this, if we want to use that, we can just create it, and we can select a file which we can upload, and this is typically a script file, which is a PowerShell file where you can do some custom things that will run under a UAC and that will execute with all the safety precautions that PowerShell has to the VM. So if you want to like install Windows feature, you can put that in there and you can start using those things like you used to do in the past. So, and then you can give it some arguments like I want an extra module, or I want an extra set of credentials being used for executing that file, and so on as well. So once that's done, this extension then will execute it upon the next time the machine will be run. Okay. Now, there's also a way of doing this in an automated style. If we take a look at our ISE once more, we can easily just take a look here. We can I have some files here, and you can just easily where is it? Yeah. So you can just easily add this VM extension into PowerShell, because we want to do everything as automated as possible. So we want to do it with PowerShell, and we just give it the configuration that we want to use and the file that we want to use. So this is two variables that I'm using here: public config and the private config. So if we take a look here, what's in there? If we take a look at a public config, private config, they should be define them. Just take a look. Yeah, it's in the config file. That's true. But here, yes. So here we have these configurations available, where we can have ready. Be going insane. So where you can configure your files and just push them towards the VM, and then on start it will execute the entire thing. As you can see, this is still a lot of scripting that we need to do, and we didn't define anything here. So the real definition of the script itself is in here. So we have two scripts that we need. We have this. Here we are. Why didn't define it earlier? So these are the public and the private config. So here in private config, I'm using this to define my storage account key, where I want to fetch my files which I'm uploading, and this is actually the configuration that I want to use to execute it. And as you can see, upon startup, I will execute this command during boot. Now, if you take a look at the DSC boot, we actually define some things here. We want to configure it as a web server, and then we need to build some stuff. We need to get all the blob data from the things that we define. So I'm going to get all the files that I put in the storage account. I'm going to get them through this, and then finally, this is the configuration that will be executed through the config script. Where is it again? So in the config script, and then we are in the config PS1. Is that the correct one? Not the correct one. Oh, I had some there. It's this one. Yeah. So this will execute all these settings. So the environment and stuff, what we want deployed. So this is really not an easy way to do it. Now the thing is, how does this work, and where can we improve? Well, if we do this in Azure, well, the cool thing is that it is scalable and elastic, so we can have this in a repeatable way. Yeah. By dynamism, we can have the same configuration but in a different environment. So we only define it, and once we deploy it through the custom scripting, we can just say, well, we want to deploy it as that name, and all the variable names will be read out automatically. And we can do this by using the Azure extensions, even for multi-tenancy, because we execute them on a local level and we don't execute them on a global level, so that way it can be isolated from anything else. If you take a look at how this will work, well, the DSC Azure extension is a new way of working and doing it, and this makes it a lot easier, because now we have full native DSC support through the Azure extension, and we can easily just define it by JSON and XML and upload it like that. So we don't need to write these these immense long scripts. We can just write short scripts and make it really work through definition. So Azure will just manage the environment, the VMs, the drives, etc., etc. You just give it a JSON XML file along, and the DSC will make sure that it all will be configured. Yeah. And then we can just integrate it easily with tools as Visual Studio, Brewmaster, Octodeploy, and stuff like that that all utilize the DSC modules. Now, DSC is there since 2012. It comes with the Windows Framework 4.0, so most of you guys already have it if you want to start using it. The previews, they work for 2012 R2 and Windows 8.1. You can try installing it on an 8.0, but it will fail for some reasons. The resource kits, as I already mentioned, are continually being shipped. In relation to other toolings, well, we have Visual Studio, which is using continuously on top of DSC. So the pipeline is being rebuilt on top of that. Azure, the configuration of IaaS is being used through DSC. Even System Center has an integration for DSC to the via virtual machine role. And this SCVMM service model, so that also supports DSC. And there's also other management tools. Yeah. DevOps support, I already mentioned that. Through means of custom extensions, so a little bit like PowerShell. And even Chef and Puppet support DSC from that perspective too. So you can use one tool to manage the modules, and then you can use another one to use the configuration drift there too. Now, the demo that I just wanted to show you is what happens under the hood is that you have a client where you write your configuration code, and then you upload the configuration code to an Azure blob. Also create a bootstrapper for that. And that was a DSC boot. And then what happens is that if we then have it in the Azure blob, we activate it through the script extension. The VM gets loaded and it will download the bootstrapper. It then will also take a look at the configuration file that will be downloaded to the machine itself, and that the bootstrapper will parse the configuration. So that way everything gets executed as is defined. Yeah. If necessary, we can still download some tools from the resource gallery, and we can then start installing all the tools that we need, or all the resources that we need for that machine, and those will be seen then as DSC resources where the configuration can then apply them to the machine. So the old school DSC, take another look here. So normally you have this is the bootstrapper that will run it. This can be closed. Here's my config script. I was looking up. And what you needed to do is when you're doing DSC, you need to write a configuration script. So that looks something like this, where you define each feature or asset that you want to add to the machine. Now in this case, I've imported a DSC resource, which is an experimental web administration module. I could easily just do an import of the DSC resource model, OneGet, for instance. Even if you do something like this, import DSC resource module, you can actually start tapping through it. It can be for some reason it doesn't work, but normally it can also recognize the modules that you have when you want to import DSC resource, if you have all the resources installed on your machine. Now, if we then take a look at the definition, what you need to do is, for instance, here I will install a Windows feature called IIS, which is our web server, as we all know it. So I want to make sure that this machine will actually be configured as a web server, and I want to deploy ASP.NET 4.5 applications, and I want to set a default website with all these config settings. So the feature depends then on a Windows feature called IIS, which I'm referring to here. And I don't want the web server to start. I just want to make sure that it's present, and I give it the name default website, which is my new default site. Then, of course, you still need some files on there. So we need to define our content, and for this, I'm just uploading or downloading these modules, which I defined during my configuration in. Just look for them. Which I defined here. Sorry. So where they will be uploaded from this resource too. Yeah. And then what happens is it will create all these folders on the local machine. It will create from this source. It will upload all the content, and then we will create a new website based upon this content, which then is again building upon this dependency called the ASP.NET 4.5. So actually, if you ever did installation of Windows features with PowerShell, these are actually the role names that you need to use when you're doing install feature. Yeah. So it's not as unfamiliar as you think. It's just another way of writing it. And then you have a nice definition of your entire service, actually building on all the different aspects of your needs. Yeah. So you go to web content. So you start off with the main dependency, then you work your way through until you reach your goal. So this is a JSON-esque language that you're gonna take a look at. So not a lot of people, IT pros like JSON, but it's still very readable, and you have a good idea what's going on there. Like for instance, here I also add. I commented out that you can also do a one-git resource called sysinternal. So this will actually in the background do an install package, which is called sysinternals, which we all know, all written by Mark Rasinovich. Hey, I sponsored the guy again because every time I say his name, I get $1 for that. Mark will be very pleased. And then you can just start easily installing tools like sysinternals, Zoomit, Vim, and you can just use everything that you have with the one-git configuration. You can also easily apply here to the DSC configuration. Now, as you can see, that is very time-consuming, especially if you need to then write the entire provisioning. I need to do the config of the custom script. I need to add some additional tools, and then I need to start looking at the resource extension status list, because I'll need some status back from my DSC where it's applied correctly, and then after a minute or 12, everything is installed. Yeah. Now, that's the old school DSC. Now, luckily, the guys from Azure really made it easy on us, and they entered something completely new, which was called the DSC extension. It's been there for quite a while now, and it's being used on a regular basis by a lot of people. And the beauty of it is that you only need two small scripts, and that you can apply it immediately from the portal or by means of the Azure commandlets itself. What it does is it pushes the DSC definition to storage, set the extension, attach it to the VM, and then whatever you need, it will extract all the downloads, and it will just start the DSC configuration based upon the new small script that you just written. It can be extensive, of course, depending on all the definitions that you have in there. Yeah. So how does that work? So if you take a look at the portal itself, I'm not going to do the custom script. I can easily just say go for the PowerShell desired state configuration extension. So this is my same machine as before, and I'll show you in PowerShell in a second. So what you do here is you upload a configuration module. Let's say I have this one open. And then you can just say do a modified. You can even create a PSD file from there, and then just say module qualified name of configuration. You just mention the configuration name. I think in this case that was just IIS install, and you're good to go. And just click OK, and then it will happen. Now, the beauty starts, of course, if you want to automate it, is that you do it from within PowerShell and not from within the portal. You don't want to do that 500 times. Of course, if you want to quickly just provision one, and you're accidentally in the portal and you want to have some overview what's going on there, you can easily just do that. But for now, I'm just going to do it through the means of PowerShell. So what I did here is I already executed those, but to make sure that I don't make any mistakes, I'm going to reapply my subscription settings. So that's always a good best practice, by the way. If you're doing Azure automation with PowerShell, always make sure that you have a default subscription name set, and that you also apply a default storage account name, so that way you can't make mistakes if you're doing something in production. So that's just... That wasn't the goal. Stop. Okay. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I need to do something different. I'm going to press another button. I completely executed my script, but I wanted to do it line by line. Okay, so I'm going to apply my default one. Here we go. I'm going to set my subscription to SQL Pass VC. So this is a storage account I created earlier, just to show you that I'm doing this for you guys specifically. So if I take a look at this subscription, then you will see that everything should be set by default now. Well, as you can see here, so it's default is current, and current account name is SQL Pass. And then I'm gonna push my DSC configuration file to the Azure VM. So here we have, I'm going to force it because I already tested it, and it could be that I forgot to delete it, so hence the force. So this is the file that I'm going to upload. So it will install just a default IIS server, and then it will kick off. So if I just do this, well, it now uploaded a file inside my storage account. And now I'll just do a config of my machine in Azure itself. I'll just say a small instance size based upon that image. I use an admin name called Ike. This is my password. I will delete the machine, so in the end you will not be able to open it up. I'll just copy it already to show you that I can access the machine. So add versioning. That has been done, and now we'll just add a DSC extension, upload the IIS install PS1, so the file itself with the configuration name in IIS installs. That's the thing that needs to be executed. I still need to do one more thing, that's adding a local port and a public port, so that way my HTTP traffic can move on and can pass through. So that has been done. And now I only need to press the button to create it, and everything will happen automatically. So in the end, it will just install a clean IIS. If we now take a look at the portal again, hopefully I'm still in the correct. I'm still in the correct subscription. So if I now take a look at my VMs, you will see that this virtual machine will be created, should be created. Let me just check. It is under creation. Let's see if the cloud service is already. So that's already there. That resource group is already existing. All goes well, the VM rule is deploying, so if all goes well, we should now be able to see our VMs. Virtual machines.
And Mike, this is Jason. While that's coming up, just as a time check, we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I know. I have about 5 minutes. 5 minutes to do. So, give it a couple of seconds. Just do a quick F5 refresh to make sure that it doesn't. It can take some time before it shows up in the portal. Oh no! Don't sign out. I should have sacrificed a Java developer this morning, and my demos would have worked a little bit better. So if all goes well, I should be able to see my okay. So browsing again. My VMs, machines. Come on. Why does it have to take so long? It's still not showing, although it should be there. That's still deploying. I will just continue with the presentation and we will take a look at it afterwards. But you will see that eventually it will have deployed IIS without going in there, without adding additional scripting, just by definition. Okay, just to keep that in mind. So there's now this new concept which doesn't play nicely with DSC, not at all for the moment, which is called the Resource Manager, for those who haven't heard of it. So this is what the new portal, the new Azure portal, is totally based on. It's based on Resource Manager, where in the past the Azure management was done through asset management. Now you're managing full applications. So it's not only just on one asset, but an application it can exist out of multiple services and multiple VMs. Yeah. And why am I telling you guys this? Because this is the next best thing. So you have, first of all, have DSC if you're not into the new thing called Resource Manager. But if you want to use the knowledge that you have in DSC, you can have that. But this will be combined. This will be very powerful because you can have both Resource Manager for managing the entire farm and then DSC for configuring everything up. How it works is that you create a resource group and you put everything in there, and it's also based on a JSON-esque template. Yeah. So this will look a little bit the same like you have the DSC configuration. Yeah. And it can even span over multiple regions, so that's even a better thing for manageability. If you never use it, or if you want to know how you can use it, well, it's first of all you need to switch your PowerShell mode. You need to go from Service Management mode to Azure Resource Manager mode. And the good thing is that nowadays most of the commandlets that we used to have in the normal service management mode are now also existing in new resource manager mode. And to make it easy on you, to show you how easy it is and to use it, is maybe I can give a small demo on how it looks when you open Visual Studio and start working from there, because Visual Studio has a good support for the JSON files that are being created for Resource Manager. To start off, I'll just do a new project. And as you can see, they have this resource group here. And if you create that, I'm just going to make sure that this gets done away with. If you create that, you will get the choice to create a certain kind of configuration actually. And as you can see here, we have, like, for instance, web app to SQL, which is based upon the SQL databases on Azure, but also virtual machines. And if we take a look at those, even with a load balancer, if we take a look at those, I'm almost there, guys, so bear with just me for 2 more minutes, and then we can go home or continue our day. So if you then take a look at our newly refreshed created project, you can actually see that it has created for me a PowerShell script, which will deploy the resource manager upon that, and we'll be using these JSON scripts. And here is where we do our definition. So we have a parameter virtual network name, we have a network interface, we have a load balancer, we have all these things that we know from Azure when we want to define a VM, like a VM name and even the storage account container, where we can this is kind of the template that we want to use. Yeah? And we can set the SKU here, we can set some metadata, even variables that we want to use, resource IDs, and so on and so on. And we can easily now just start defining our environment instead of scripting it, and this script will just deploy it, and we can continuously use it to deploy it. There's also some for SQL Server already existing, and there's also some galleries that can provide some templates, some ARM templates. Now this is still a work in progress. They're still building and expanding the ARM, because it's called ARM for short. They're still expanding that universe, so not everything is in there yet. Now, the cool thing when you do it from within Visual Studio, you can easily just say, I need an additional resource, and just right-click on this tree. I don't know whether you can see it very well. Let me just zoom in a little bit. As you can see here, if I right-click here, I can just add a new resource, and this will give me actually a wizard on the resources that I want to apply to, and that can be easily just another service. So if you want to use, like, for instance, a SQL server, and you want to add a service from let's say HD Insight, well, you can in the future you can probably add it through the same thing, and then you can easily configure the two to work together. For instance, you can add layers like SQL databases in a PowerShell DSC extension, but there's still some issues there when deploying V1 and V2 types, so it's hard to use them sometimes. Even nested deployments if you want to do that. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that you can do. Let's say that I want to add a SQL server here to that deployment, give it a name. And as you can see here, that resource has been added, and I can now start configuring everything that I need to know there, firewall rules and all that stuff that we know from the portal or from earlier scripting rules. So this is the future where you need to look at. But as I mentioned, there was only a couple of minutes left. I can still show you where we are with our VM. As you can see, it was finally created. If you take a look at the portal here, it will probably show. Take a look. No. Yeah, there it is. It's starting. Just quickly going to show you what there is as a result. If you take a look at the settings, take a look at the extensions, you see that the PowerShell DSC has been deployed, and you can even view a detailed status stating now this has been totally still hasn't been run, but normally you would get some details on what's going on, what's happening from an execution perspective, so that gives you some logging, some feedback. Voila. With that, I want to thank you. I hope you found it interesting, and that it gives you some new ways of looking at how you want to automate your environments and how you want to DevOps, because as you've seen, I've demonstrated both developer tools and infrastructure tools like PowerShell, and both worlds need to work together really strongly to make sure that your deployments keep automated on the best level and make life easier for all of us. So I think with that, I give the word back to the virtual cloud chapter guys, unless there are some more questions there.
Mike. Actually, the only questions we really have here is some questions about your font size with the presentation, because some of the font came through pretty small.
Okay.
But
all right. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. And hopefully, if you've got a session, you'll submit it over to us so we can get it scheduled. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
All right. Thank you. Have a pleasant evening or good afternoon or